Hello, how are you? Sorry, I'm like looking in several different directions because I tried my cameras are all funky today, and so is my setup, my mic, everything. Okay, so I need you guys, guys, in the last stream that I did. I appreciate so much those of you because I was saying like, let me know how the sound is. Let me know if the sound is okay. Hi guys who are here. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, good afternoon. I was saying, let me know how the sound is. Let me know if the sound is okay. And then I watched the replay and the background music was a mess. So let me include in that. Let me know if the background music is a mess. Right now, hi Anna. Right now, I have things set up a little bit differently than usual. I have my mic is much closer to my mouth, so let me know if the sound, like if the volume is too much. Hi, Anne. Hi, guys. I'm home from work today, so I'm doing this live actually at like a decent hour. Maybe like the stream, comment in the chat, say hello. So yeah, and just do let me know here in the chat. I can see you. Let me know if the sound is okay, and let me know if the background music is too loud. I have it on a pretty low setting because I like the sound of having music, but if you guys hate it, I can turn it off. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Hello and welcome. Today, I am home from work for a variety of reasons that I'm not going to get into, and I am ready to discuss the Danny Masterson retrial. I am here specifically, especially to recap week 2, and yesterday was the beginning of week 3 of testimony. When I say week 2, I mean week 2 of testimony. I'm not really counting the jury selection process. And yesterday was the first day of week 3. I have plenty of stuff to talk about. I have written copious notes and I'm looking forward to like a long, chill stream with you guys. So if you're down for that, let me know in the chat. Like, get a snack, get cozy. I have myself a little drink right here. If my tongue starts to turn pink, it's because I'm drinking some caffeinated juice. And yeah, so if you don't know, I've been covering hi Anne, hi Avery. I've been covering the trial of Danny Masterson. This is his retrial. There was the official first trial in November of 2022. That ended in a hung jury, and now we are doing a retrial. And there's positives and benefits to that for both sides, for both the prosecution and the defense. Everybody is practiced now. So there's definitely some things coming up that happened in the past week that I guess I'm surprised. I guess I'm surprised now that they've been through this before. I guess I'm kind of surprised that they can't come up with something better to do than this. But we'll get into it. Yeah. So Danny Masterson, who was on that 70s show, is currently in the middle of a criminal retrial because the trial ended up in a hung jury. He's in the middle of a criminal retrial, having 3 Jane Does accusing him of intimate essay kind of crimes. Sorry, I'm trying to be, because it's near the beginning of the stream, so I'm being cautious with my language. You know how YouTube is. And then honestly, there's another Jane Doe who's going to testify who the actions against her are not even charged. So there's a pattern of behavior here with Mr. Masterson that seems to be, allegedly coming forward. So I think it's important for us to discuss. On my channel, I tend to talk more about problematic influencers, but celebrities are influential. I don't know if anybody forgot, but we still have those. Influencers aren't the only ones who wield power in this little world of ours. So It's important to discuss, especially when people who are credibly accused of SA get off on a technicality or something like that. Um, I'm hoping that doesn't happen here. We had the first trial was a mistrial, because of the hung jury, and so that could well have happened. I'm glad that they pursued the retrial, but, it's worth discussing. And it's a beautiful case in the sense that there are a lot of women who are being very strong, very brave, very courageous, and banding together to take down this guy who appears to be an asshat. So I'm all about it. Get cozy, get comfy, and let's get into week 2. Week 1 was mostly the testimony of Jane Doe 2, and then it ended with the beginning of the testimony of Jane Doe 1. That is where we are picking up here with my reporting, my recap essentially of week 2, which was day 6 of testimony took place on Monday of last week. So that's where we're picking up in the timeline, my friends. So rewind in the brain a little bit. First of all, it was a very weird week in general. The jury members kept coming to court late. The days were starting late. There were a lot of breaks. There were a lot of pauses. Court itself was closed this past Friday and on Monday of this week. So it was just a short week. Excuse me. It was a short week. And then this week is also a short week as a result. So day 6, Monday of last week, just a lot happened. So I have a lot to say about the events of Monday of last week. It's gonna take me a while, but after I get through the first day, I promise it's going to go a lot faster. I am here to give a recap more than a detailed play-by-play. Oh, yay, thank you, Anne. But I do want to focus a bit on Monday, day 6, because it set a precedent for a lot of what came after it in the week. So let's get into it. Day 6, Monday, started. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong camera this whole time. I'm so sorry. I have not been looking at you guys. Oh, forgive me. Right? Please tell me I didn't just take down the camera that was functioning. Yeah, no. All right. Hello. Ah, I'm tired even though I'm home. Okay, guys and gals, we are all right. So day 6 of testimony, Monday of last week. It started with Jane Doe 1. Hi, there's my camera. It started with Jane Doe 1 talking about how the previous Friday, which was her first day of testimony, she had been disturbed, thrown off, distracted by the presence of Vicky Podobareski, who is a lawyer either for Scientology or for David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology himself, being in the gallery, which is the audience space for the courtroom, right in her eye line, right in her line of sight, making faces, making very doubtful and suspicious expressions while she was testifying about what she's alleging Danny Masterson committed against her. And she wasn't sure like what to say or how to address it on Friday, but here on Monday, she was making a point to say like this is weird and I don't like it and it's distracting me. It made my testimony on Friday a little more like nervous and inconsistent, but like distracted than I wanted it to be, and it disturbed me. And is there anything we can do about that? So they discussed. The lawyers had a discussion with the judge about how to address this, and basically, Judge Almeida allowed that statement to be put on the record in front of the jury. And because the jury heard her testimony on Friday, so if she seemed like off on Friday, there's the context as to why. I don't believe in the reporting that Vicky was back. I don't know, but I think at least not most of the days of the week last week. and I don't think on Monday because or if she was, I think she would have been kicked out after the specific call out of her. Um, so Jane Doe 1 continued with giving her direct examination. That was what happened on Friday, and that's what continued on Monday morning. Um, she certainly has a difficult tale to tell about what happened with her with Danny Masterson, and for a few reasons, I'm not going to go into deep detail on everything that the Jane Does are saying. But just, the transcripts are out there. The underbound yeah, the Underground Bunker blog has pretty good, like, almost word for word note taking of a lot of the testimony if you want to go and specifically, like, kind of read almost word for word, like I said, pretty close, um, of what exactly everybody was saying. And of course, you can watch the reporting from the YouTubers who have been reporting on this case all along. Aaron Smith Levin from the channel Growing Up in Scientology is making multiple videos a day reporting because he's there in the courtroom live. And then he has his perspective that he brings, and then he'll do group collab videos, I guess, with other Scientology channels that discuss their multiple perspectives that they bring to it as well. And he'll often do streams with his lawyer friend, Zach Morgan. So he's a good channel to follow, as well as the rest of the SPTV channels. Oh No, Nora, for example, has been doing some consistent trial coverage. So you can I'll start out here by saying I'm not a Scientologist or an ex-Scientologist. I'm an enthusiast. What? An enthusiast who has been following this niche of content over the past few months. I'm also not a lawyer. I am a law enthusiast who's been watching a lot of LawTube over the past couple years. So that's the perspective at which I come at this trial from. Whereas you have actual ex-Scientologists over on these other channels, so they just might bring a different point of view. Yeah, and Ron, exactly. I saw a video from him. Hold on, I'm trying to keep. Yeah, Ron, he's been doing the most consistent, like quick, not quick, but like fastest to get out there reporting videos. I keep looking up there because that's usually where my camera is. So yeah, he's he's doing a good job. He's there in person. All right, I'm gonna actually get to it. God damn. Okay. So Jane Doe 1, I swear to God, she's giving her testimony. All right, she's still in her direct examination as of the mid-morning break on Monday morning, day 6 of testimony. At this time, there was the beginning of what became a little bit of a ruckus. It's hard to tell exactly the timeline on this, but I'm almost like annoyed to be talking about it, but we're gonna discuss it because it comes up several times throughout the week, and it was a big topic on all the Scientology channels this past week while it was going on. So there was some ruckus. There was some riffraff going on. Jane Doe 1 was scratch. During the mid-morning break, there was some sort of a ruckus. It may have also been at the beginning of the lunch break, I'm not exactly sure. But there are people who were critical of what happened in that little quick moment. And I think that those who are being critical are kind of missing the point of what was going on and a little bit playing into Scientology's game. So I would encourage them not to. And let me tell you why. Oh, hi, Lydia von Stretchclaw. Yes. Oh, we're going to talk about Claire. We're going to get there. Aaron has definitely been great. Okay. So, Jane Doe 1, like I said, she was testifying on Friday and then she was continuing on Monday. She has specifically been dealing with a lot of witness intimidation attempts during her testimony. This has included the lawyer that I mentioned, Vicky Podobareski, sitting and making faces while she was testifying, distracting, right? It also included the presence of Graham Brewer, an associate of Danny Masterson. He was at least sitting on Danny's side of the courtroom, who also knew Jane Doe 1 during their Scientology days. And allegedly, according to Jane Doe 1, as told by Aaron on Growing Up in Scientology, this man had, against her consent, inappropriately put hands on her. And I'm trying to avoid, again, certain words um, in the past, years ago. And now here he is sitting in the gallery on Danny Masterson's side during the first week of trial. So if you're Jane Doe 1, you're testifying against your R wordist with your former other like assault attacker in the audience on his side. So it's a lot of pressure. Plus you have Vicky the lawyer over here making faces at you, right? Okay, there's a lot going on just sitting up there before she even starts speaking. Okay? Um Now, and to be clear, during that very first week of testimony before Monday, people identified Graham for who he was, those who knew what Jane Doe had experienced with him, and they alerted the judge, the bailiff, the lawyers, whoever they needed to alert. So during Jane Doe 1's testimony on Monday, he was not in the room, but he tried. He did try to sit in the room while she was continuing her testimony on Monday, and he was kicked out. But I'm shocked that he even came to the building, to be honest with you. The audacity of some men, I just gotta say, ew. Anyway, um, so you have Graham, gross. You have Vicky the lawyer, combination of gross. That's 2 strikes against Scientology associates in terms of potential witness intimidation, potentially, possibly, allegedly going on in the gallery. And then this whole other issue starts to unfold that looks like strike 3. And so that's the ruckus I was referring to. Sorry it took me a minute for my brain to like click in this live stream. Now this little thing that happened, it does involve Aaron from Growing Up in Scientology, Aaron Smith-Levin, and he reported on this several times last week. So I'm gonna try my best not to go into deep detail because I'm trying to make this fast. But basically, he had a moment of imperfection, God forbid, and unfortunately, it was a moment that got blown up by the defense team, Danny Masterson's lawyers, who made it much more than it would have otherwise been. It was a learning moment, but it was not devastating, I don't think. So in summary, during the first part of the day before the mid-morning break, while Jane Doe 1 was testifying, Aaron noticed, he's been there every day during the testimony part of the trial. He noticed this priest-looking guy in a full robe and collar sitting in the gallery watching the proceedings. It's unusual, at least it has been in this trial thus far. He was, the priest guy was talking to people a little bit before it started and giving different stories to different people about why he was there. He told Danny Masterson's defense lawyer, Sean Hawley, that he was invited there by Scientology, but he also told Leah Remini and Aaron that he was just there to make sure that the religious rights of Scientology were being protected. As we have discussed in past coverage on this channel, Scientology is a cult, so there's a lot just in that sentence, but we're going to keep going. Ultimately, the DA became aware that this priesty guy was there, talked to the defense about it, they talked to the judge about it, and after the morning break, Judge Almeida asked the priesty guy who he was, why he was there, and did he have any affiliation with Scientology. Now, he said to the judge that he had no affiliation with Scientology, and he was just there to make sure their religious rights were being protected. The judge bought it, Aaron bought it, everybody bought it, and moved on with their lives. So that was the beginning. And then I believe at the lunch break, I might have the timeline wrong. Let me know in the chat if I'm wrong on this stuff. So everybody was leaving the courtroom, and there's this hallway you have to go through to get to, like, the elevators and the stairs. You go down, and you go have your lunch or whatever before you come back. So everybody is leaving the courtroom, they're in the hallway, and Aaron, friendly guy, curious guy, gets to chatting with the priesty guy who he's hard to ignore, he's drawing a bit of attention to himself by wearing the full I wanna say habit because 'cause I'm thinking of nuns. He's not a nun, he's some kind of a priesty guy. So Aaron was chatting with him because he had initially believed him when he said that he was just there to be like a religious freedom fighter. And Aaron was wondering, like, so what exactly do you want to accomplish here as a religious freedom fighter? Because the judge has already made her rulings on what's going to be allowed in terms of information about Scientology and how it works. So are you here more like visually as a symbol, as like a figurehead of something, or like because there's not much you can like do because you're not a lawyer. So like what's your goal here essentially? So Aaron was chatting with this priesty guy, having a fine, calm conversation according to Aaron. And then a journalist comes up and stands with the priesty guy. And Aaron is like, "Oh, are you guys are together and you're doing like a religious freedom journalism thing?" And then the lady who stood next to the priesty guy, who had been sitting next to Aaron during the day so far, responds that she is a blogger from the Stand League, STAND, Stand League, which Aaron says is one of Scientology's front groups that pretends to be all about religious freedom and equality. But according to Scientologists who have worked with them and worked for them in the past during their time in Scientology, it's much more about being a propaganda arm for the Church of Scientology, being a hate group that attacks former Scientologists, and no other religion is benefited by their existence. So, this information very suddenly recontextualized for Aaron why the two of them were there. And when he responded to that information, according to him, he went from talking in his like quiet court voice, like I'm in the library voice, to talking in his full voice, which in that context admittedly may have sounded like yelling, but he wasn't, according to him. Of course, this is all moderately biased coming from his side of the story. So, in response to learning that the priesty guy was there with the blogger from the Stand League, this propaganda hate group, according to him, he said, "Oh, you're with the Stand League. You fucking lied to the judge, and you're here with the fucking propaganda arm of Scientology," or something to that effect. That's not an exact quote, but he used the F word twice and his voice got louder. So this outburst, if you will, drew the attention of the bailiff, who came over and he says, respect the court, quiet them down, move along, like he was breaking up a fight, essentially. And all in all, this interaction was brief, should have really been nothing. But what Aaron didn't realize at the time was that they were in this hallway and not all of the jurors had made it out of that hallway yet, which is a problem. So about 4 or 5 of the jurors overheard parts of that conversation, especially the parts where Aaron's voice got a little louder, got a little more animated. And people are being a little critical about this instance online, almost framing it like Aaron was there to be antagonistic and like he was just like yelling and berating the Stand League people, or at least that he was making this like foolish attention-seeking choice that ended up putting the trial in jeopardy. And it's true that Danny Masterson's attorney did move for a mistrial after this, and we will get to how that went. But I think that it is a dangerous trap to fall into, to say things like that, to criticize Aaron for a very normal reaction to something. And it does play into Scientology's overall strategy here, which there is one. I know Danny Masterson is the person on trial, but as Judge Almeida said, Scientology's presence is known in this courtroom. They are making themselves and their presence known in this trial. So there's things going on here. Oh, yeah, yes, yes, Lydia. Um, so sorry, I lost my place. I took such detailed notes and now I can't find them. Oh, yeah, okay. So I really don't want to overly criticize Aaron for this moment because it does, in my opinion, play into Scientology's strategy. If someone comes up to you and says something provoking, you don't get like, they can't then act surprised and victimized when you become provoked, you know? There's natural human reactions happening here. And as a reminder of why this was provoking to Aaron, these people from the Stand League were in the courtroom when Jane Doe 1 was in the middle of her testimony. She had already been facing multiple examples of witness intimidation from Graham Brewer and from Vicky the lawyer, okay? Her former attacker and her making a lot of expressions while she's testifying, right? Intimidating, influencing, okay? And then it looks like strike 3 is Mr. Priesty guy, very visible, very visual, sitting right in Jane Doe 1's eye line, which is where he had been that morning. And according to Aaron, the Stand League, who had sent that blogger, again, part of specifically what they do is to report and spread hate about ex-Scientologists, which Jane Doe 1 is an ex-Scientologist. So that's where Aaron's mind was at, which is evidenced by the fact that when Aaron first made a video reporting on this incident directly after it happened, his like half day YouTube video report. He does one at lunch break and one after the day ends. That is how he framed it in the moment. If we're talking about how this is where I go to my not a lawyer, but like junior lawyer enthusiast. You rely on the statements that people make in the moment as being the most truthful. And in the moment, when Aaron made that video reporting on this TIFF happening, his takeaway from it in that first video is we're going to have to go back to the courtroom and have another conversation with the judge about witness intimidation and what we're going to do about it. He felt like the presence of these two people was another form of witness intimidation against Jane Doe 1. Three strikes against Scientology in terms of trying to witness intimidate this one Jane Doe. And besides the potential witness intimidation factor, the other big concern here was that Mr. Priesty guy had straight up lied to the judge about why he was there and if he had any affiliations with Scientology. Judge Almeida specifically asked him if he had any affiliations with Scientology. He had told her no, none at all. And then Aaron finds out directly afterward that not only is he there at Scientology's invitation, he is there working with their propaganda publication that investigates former Scientologists. So the Priesty guy definitely lied to the judge, which is a very bad thing. If the wrong person lies to the judge, it can impact the safety of everybody in the courtroom and impact the sanctity and validity of the trial. It can even cause a mistrial, such as when this case first went to trial in November and the jury foreman lied on his jury questionnaire, okay? That didn't end up leading to a mistrial, but it could have. Because if they had gotten to a verdict in that trial, if the jury had not been hung, if they had decided guilty or not guilty, either way, the jury foreman lying on his forms would have invalidated the whole thing. Just saying, it's a problem. Also, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to lie to a judge. I'm not sure. And that may depend on whether or not you're under oath. Any lawyers in the chat, let me know. But ultimately, it's not a small thing for Aaron to find out that this guy was who he said he was. Or no, sorry, was not who he said he was. And so it makes sense that he may have gotten a little animated. And for us not to allow a moment of humanity here, dare I say, allowing a little bit of HENR is playing into Scientology's game, in my opinion. Just saying. Now, after lunch break, Danny's defense lawyers started, doing what they should do, zealously advocating for their client, kinda, and moved for a mistrial because of this moment, this small outburst. because members of the jury had overheard somebody calling Scientology a cult, for God forbid, and being angry about Scientology, and now they could not possibly be impartial, which is their job as jurors. God, it can't happen. And this is one of the issues that I have with the defense, especially with this motion and this kind of motion, is that I really think that they're forgetting who their client is at times. The defense lawyer is there to represent Danny Masterson, a Scientologist. He is not there to represent the Church of Scientology. And yet, every time anything bad is said about Scientology, somehow he stands up there to say that that must be prejudicing the jury against Danny Masterson, who is not Scientology. He is not a Scientology leader. He is just a random Scientologist. Thankfully, a lot of these types of motions do happen outside the presence of the jury, so they may not be noticing the conflation happening there, but to the rest of us, it feels a little petty, a little unrelated, and mostly like it's a tactic to waste time, because these are motions that inevitably Cohen is not going to win. So it was dramatic. I'm not saying the drama was justified. I don't think that it really was, but it was an opportunity for the defense to make more out of it than what it really was. And he took that opportunity by the horns and went with it as hard as he could. It all turned out okay in the end, though. The judge interviewed the jurors who heard something and made This is not far from watching me film a video, because I have notes for myself, but it's very detailed. It's essentially a script. If you can't tell, I'm sure you can tell. But I wanna be spot on when I talk about this. But yeah, the judge ruled that the jurors had not heard so much that they would be completely prejudiced against Danny and unable to do their job, be impartial, make a decision based on the evidence presented, etc. And honestly, I just gotta say, only 4 or 5 of them had heard anything at all, and there are 8 alternates for this jury. So even if all 4 or 5 of them had been excused from the jury, there still would have been plenty of jurors around to fill in and keep the trial going with the alternates. There would still be alternates left. So again, I don't really get why this is the thing that would make us rule for, or like move for a mistrial. It does feel like it's wasting time. I just got to say it. The jurors were allowed to remain on the jury. The trial moved forward, and the judge just gave a reminder for people to pay attention to where the jurors are so that you don't say anything related to the case while the jurors are around. She also ended up partially sequestering the jury during their lunchtime. Everything is fine, okay? Jesus. Hi, Cass in the grass. Nice to see you. So I've spent a bit of time on this. I'm spending a bit of time on this because it's been a big topic among the Scientology channels this week, and it's caused some emotions this past week, and it keeps coming up. For example, after the judge addressed this whole moment that had happened, the priesty guy and the stand league lady did both leave the courtroom while Jane Doe 1 finished her direct examination, but according to Aaron, as soon as the direct exam ended and cross-examination started, the Stand League blogger came right back into the courtroom and again sat directly in Jane Doe 1's eye line. Which to me is like, so you're not even going to try to be subtle? Like, I don't know what it is about Jane Doe 1. She must have the most damning testimony to tell, because there's a lot of effort from Scientologists going into trying to manipulate and influence and impact her testimony specifically, allegedly, apparently, so it seems to me. Like, this is a lot. And at the end of the day, basically, I just don't think that this like little moment of vocalization, this little tiff, was not that bad, but the defense did their job by making it look a lot worse than it was. The court did her job by ruling that no, it wasn't actually that bad. You can chill, defense. And moving forward from there, Aaron did his job of being very cautious and observant to make sure that the jury was out of the room, safe and sound, before he said anything else that he needed to say. So everybody was doing their job. It was a learning moment, but it was not devastating. And let's not act like it is, because when we do, we give Scientology more power than they deserve. Okay? Okay. This is a good moment. If you haven't liked the stream yet, give it a like. Give it a hello. Sorry. I get uncomfortable. I've been sitting for a while and I have a while longer. Let me look at the chat. How are you guys doing? I didn't even like really say hello to you. I'm so happy that you're here. Guys, this is great. In fairness, I think Cohen has a quota to meet demanding mistrials. Yeah. I mean, it sucks because part of it is like, it's just, that's what defense attorneys kind of do, is they look for every opportunity where something might be even just slightly unfair toward their client. So they have to zealously advocate, and it looks awful looking on from the outside when we are people who tend to believe victims of these types of things. He's doing his job. It is not pretty to watch, but he's doing his job. All right, let's keep going. That's only halfway through day one. Day one of last week, day 6 of testimony. But I promise we're gonna move a little faster after day 1. Speaking of day 1, let's talk about Jane Doe 1's actual testimony, which was so damning that everybody needed to be in there to distract her, apparently. Yeah. Oh, Anne's got a good point. If he hadn't, where is it? I want to show it. If he hadn't been in there pretending to be a priest, it never would have happened. That's true. And you know what it is, oh, hi, Kurt Kilgore Trout. I'm home from work, so I got to stream at a human hour today. What Aaron says is he was having an amicable, fine conversation and believing Mr. Priesty guy the whole time, and what set him off and made him realize what was going on wasn't even the priest. It was the Stand League blogger coming up and standing next to the priest and saying, "I'm with the Stand League. We're here to stand," or whatever the fuck they say. So, and Aaron, oh my God, okay. Aaron was saying, like, if she hadn't opened her mouth, he to this day would be oblivious as to what was happening there. So if he hadn't addressed like a priest, if he hadn't have lied to the judge, if the lady hadn't opened her mouth, there were a lot of ways unrelated to Aaron to prevent something like this. Bye, Anna. Catch me on the replay. Hi, Snooper or Super Boss. Hi. All right. So yeah, we can't pin anything that happens on just one person. There's always multiple things going on, or multiple I'm not going to finish the sentence. You get what I'm saying. Danny is the guy from that 70s show. Yes. He played the guy Hyde, I think. Is that his name? What's the name of the character? But he's the one that I have in the thumbnail. He's on trial. He's done some bad things. Allegedly. All right, so let's get into the testimony of Jane Doe 1. Highlights include content warning, though. So if hearing about an attack like what has been described would trigger you, let me just say maybe leave this stream for like 5 minutes and come back, okay? So if you need to leave, now is the time. Now is the time to leave. Okay, and I'm going to talk about it. Okay, so Danny Masterson's alleged attack against Jane Doe 1 was not only sexual, but also violent. I'm not going to get into super detail, but I just want to acknowledge that this is not kid stuff that we're talking about here. It is very serious allegations. And while we are all getting distracted by the man in a priest robe and the YouTuber who had a moment of imperfection, what's really happening in this trial is real victims of real crimes hopefully being brought to real justice. So I just hope that we keep our focus where it needs to be. Jane Doe 1 talked about a Scientology official who helped her write her Scientology report about what happened with Danny. This is not a straight up police report because, as I described in my last stream about this trial, they're not allowed to go straight to the police about something that has happened to them, especially about attacks committed against them by other Scientologists, because going to the police is a high crime in Scientology and it can lead to being excommunicated. And the Scientology version of excommunication means disconnection. You never again can speak to your Scientology friends, family, relatives. They will not be speaking to you. That's for damn sure. And in Jane Doe 1's case, the Scientology official was in the room while she wrote her report and was telling her certain things that she was not allowed to include, such as the R word for essay. I'm sorry, that's a lot of censoring. YouTube is what it is. And the fact that Danny essentially got a firearm involved when she was trying to fight back in the moment. So this report excluded that information. It was a very sanitized version of events, and that is what was given to the LAPD at the time, after it was additionally altered to remove some important information about who else was going to see that report. And I will say this is where I get a little bit confused about these reports. So if you can help me clarify this, let me know in the chat. So from what I understand, there are different versions of the report that were used for different purposes. It seems like there was one more kind of detailed, more truthful recording of the events that went in Jane Doe 1's personal file with Scientology, I think. And then this more censored version of the report that was written with a Scientology employee advising her, kind of like standing over her, making sure she did it a certain way. That version of the report went to Celebrity Center, which is Danny Masterson's organization, his like essentially his local church of Scientology. And also, or I guess it was written like knowing that she was going to bring this to the police and they wanted to control what she said to the police. So that's why they had her write the cleaned up version. That's what I took away from it. I'm not entirely sure. Let me know in the chat or in the comments below if you're watching this on the replay. Also, maybe give it a like if you're watching it on the replay. So I'm not exactly clear who knew Jane Doe 1 was going to report this event to the police. And if anybody wants to educate me, let me know. But it does seem that Jane Doe 1 took the censored version of the report that was also sent to the Celebrity Center. And that is the version of the report that she gave to the police when she reported all of this to the LAPD. So she did a Scientology high crime. In and of itself, reporting this to the police was what's known as a suppressive act, which meant that she was going to be declared a suppressive person and excommunicated from Scientology. But what is interesting to note is that before she gave this report to the police, she redacted or removed the top, like the letterhead, the top section of the report that shows who within Scientology would have received that report, and therefore which Scientologists would have been informed about Danny Masterson allegedly attacking and R-wording her, even though it was a cleaned up version of the report. They still would have known because they know the codes. Like if you replace this word with another one, you know kind of what it really means, ideally. Jane Doe 1 said on the stand that one of the people who would have received this report was David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, both then and now. So I think it's very significant that his name was brought up openly, put on the record of, as being sorry, I lost my words. I think it's very significant that David Miscavige was brought up and put on the record as being made aware of the potential crimes being committed, going on right under his nose within his own church. Everything goes back to David Miscavige in Scientology. So this direct line of communication is just further evidence of that. Now, because this port was so sanitized and toned down, the LAPD clearly did not get a full picture of what happened in this attack. The censored report also gives Danny's lawyers, the defense, a lot of room to say, well, why did you say this to the police when actually this other thing is what happened? Why did you lie to the police? Why is this report so different? And try to raise doubt in that way for the jury. But the thing is that that doesn't really work very well when there is so much testimony in this retrial about Scientology policy and procedures, as opposed to the first trial. It is a whole different story, and it makes a lot more sense when you understand that JD1 wrote that toned down report with a high-ranking Scientology supervisor basically looming over her the whole time. It really hits different, and her actions make complete sense to a reasonable juror. So that's about as far as we got on day 6 of testimony, Monday of last week. Now we're moving on to day 7 of testimony, Tuesday of last week, and now I think we're gonna move a little bit quicker, a little more bullet pointed through the rest of the days up until today, because I am gonna cover what happened yesterday as well. Hi, Mallory. You're funny. Wait, hold on. Why am I trying to read it out loud when I can show it? I keep hearing you almost choke on your spit or something, and I just wanna say that happens to me too when I'm really mad. Thank you for sharing, and yes, I don't know what it is, man. Ooh, sorry, I'm uncrossing my legs and recrossing them a different way. I'm too tall for the area that I'm sitting in. Everybody take a quick stretch. We're just sometimes the back and the neck, man. We use and abuse. All right. So let's get on to Tuesday, day 7 of testimony. And on Tuesday, Aaron made a note in his reporting that none of the suspected witness intimidators were in the courtroom. So good. Either they wisened up and stayed out themselves, or actually, yeah, that's the only option, because the court made it clear later on in the day that she did not ban people from the courtroom, or at least not who Philip Cohen is about to talk about. So day 7, Tuesday, we get to see our old pal Philip Cohen back up on the stand, or questioning the witnesses. He's Danny Masterson's defense lawyer, one of them, and he is just a pro at nitpicking and distracting and like completely missing the point and trying to make the jurors miss the point. And like, I get why he's doing that, which is because that's the best he can do, because there's like, if he had some bombshells to drop in his cross-examination, he would be dropping them, but he hasn't been because there's the Jane Does are just credible and honest people, and all of the evidence supports what they're saying. So what else can you do but nitpick inconsistencies that are not even inconsistencies? So, for example, Philip Cohen opened up by questioning Jane Doe 1 about her discomfort with certain Scientology people being in the courtroom. And rather than framing it as her feeling like she was experiencing witness intimidation, he was framing it more like she's just anti-Scientologist. And he's trying to paint this picture. And at one point, he even verbalized that Vicky, the lawyer, was banned from the courtroom because of Jane Doe 1's scheming. And of course, like, you know, that's me paraphrasing and commentating, that's not literally it, but whatever he said, it was obnoxious enough that the judge felt the need to step in and clarify, "No, no, no. Vicky has not been banned from this room. She is welcome to sit and watch in the gallery just like anybody else, following court decorum and respectful behavior, of course." And that's not the only time that the judge felt the need to step in during Philip Cohen's cross-examinations. It is something. Um, Philip Cohen was getting so nitpicky about certain details of Jane Doe 1's various interviews that she has done over time with the police and with the court, pointing out various inconsistencies that were really just different wordings of the same thing, until the judge finally had to step in and say, "Listen, dude, this is just how people talk sometimes. You're putting words into Jane Doe 1's mouth. That's not what she said, and we know it. Move on." And that is rare. I've gotta emphasize how rare that is. I've watched multiple trials at this point. Judges do not it is rare for a proceeding in front of the jury. If it's another hearing, sure, the judge will kinda talk with the lawyers, kinda like they're having a normal conversation sometimes, but just, like, separated by he's up in his little place and they're down there. But they're not just, like, chit-chatting in front of a jury. So the fact that the judge is feeling the need multiple times during this trial to step in it's really not a good sign. It's really embarrassing for Philip Cohen. I just if you're not used to watching a lot of LawTube, I recommend it just because it gives context to trials like this. There's a lot of Scientology trials going on right now and a lot further coming up. So, you learn a lot by watching trials. I also, like I said in my last video, I recommend, just for the sake of if anything ever happens to you and you have to be in a trial as a witness or as a victim or as a you're suing somebody or whatever, it's worth just being familiar with the process. Anyway, so like I said before in my coverage of this trial, Philip Cohen is going so deep on such small details, and ultimately it is not winning him any points with the jury or really accomplishing much. But if this is how he uses his time, it means that this is the best that he can do. So let's just remember that point. Again, he's not dropping any bombshells in his cross examination because there are none to drop. The Jane Does are being truthful, credible, and consistent. The facts of the case are not in Danny's favor, so the defense has nothing else to resort to. That was the morning of day 7, which was Tuesday of last week, nitpicking. And in the afternoon after lunch break, it was more of Cohen nitpicking about such hard-hitting topics as the exact temperature of the water in the jacuzzi, whether or not Danny Masterson carried Jane Doe 1 from the jacuzzi into the hotel room, or whether he helped her from the jacuzzi into the hotel room. Also, whether the lights were off and it was pitch black in the hotel room, or if maybe one light was on, or if maybe Jane Doe 1's eyes adjusted to the darkness and then she could see. There were no questions about whether or not Danny Masterson actually did the things that Jane Doe 1 is claiming against him, but there are questions about exactly how she knew what type of grape juice Danny Masterson served her. How did she know it was Welch's? Like, that's the hard-hitting stuff that Cohen is focusing in on during the cross-examination of Jane Doe 1. With what she is accusing your client of, Phil. Jesus God, get it together. Or don't, because honestly, it seems like Danny deserves to go to jail. So during this belabored, that's not the word I was looking for, but I don't remember what the word is. Awful, nitpicking cross-examination. There were a lot of objections being made, again, not only by the prosecution lawyers, but also by Judge Almeida herself, which again is embarrassing for the defense lawyers. And at the end of the day, the judge told Philip Cohen that he would have 45 minutes the next morning to finish up his cross-examination of Jane Doe 1, and then she advised everyone that redirect and recross should be swift. She was clearly tired of Philip's shit, just like everybody else. And, listen, as a lawyer, you have to do what you have to do the best that you can with what you've got, but at a certain point, if all you've got is this, is the temperature of the jacuzzi, how did you know it was Welch's grape juice, and were you carried from the jacuzzi into the hotel room, or were you helped from the jacuzzi into the hotel room? If this is what you've got, maybe zealously advocating for your client is zealously encouraging him to take a plea deal, because Danny Masterson's lawyers are not winning any points here, and they shouldn't, because if this is really the best he's got, it really doesn't look good for Danny. God bless the Jane Does, what they have to deal with. It's exhausting for us just to listen to this, and first of all, we're not listening to it, we're reading it on a piece of paper because they're not allowing any streaming of this or broadcasting of it. It's exhausting just for me to think about it and to imagine it and talk about it, let alone being in the courtroom, being a witness, being an actual Jane Doe. God bless him. God damn. Okay. So that was Tuesday, day 7 of testimony. Now we get to day 8. Wednesday of last week, 1 week ago. First of all, again, just a quick note, all of the Scientology suspects, the ones who we thought were witness intimidating, did not show up once again, so that was a good thing. The morning began exactly as the judge had ordered, allowing 45 minutes for Philip Cohen to continue his nitpicking, his cross-examination, sorry. And then at exactly the 45-minute mark, she cut him off and told him to sit down. And the redirect and the recross were very swift, which is what the judge requested. And then some people know how to listen to the judge. And then after Jane Doe 1 was finished and they were switching witnesses, I think at that point they went to a break or something, but Philip Cohen tried again to call for a mistrial, because how could he possibly continue to properly defend his client if he couldn't ask all the questions that he wanted to ask of Jane Doe 1 because he was cut off by the judge? And Judge Almeida said absolutely not, and listed all of the ways that he had wasted his own time and the court's time, because his inability to manage time and properly prioritize questions that he wanted answers to is not the court's responsibility to fix. And I personally like it when judges do shit like that. After that, they had a surprise testimony from Jane Doe 1's cousin, Rachel, who had been with her on a family vacation shortly after the event with Danny Masterson. During her testimony, they were mainly discussing Jane Doe 1's mood. Did she say anything to Rachel about the attack? Was there any bruising on Jane Doe 1's body? And there was a picture that was shown both during Jane Doe 1's testimony and during cousin Rachel's testimony of the two of them, which Jane Doe 1 said has bruising in it on her body. So they went over their photos as well. And okay, I can't read what I messed up in my note taking. Basically, to be honest, the bruising on Jane Doe 1's body in the photo is faint, but that is not because I think it was not there. I think it is because the way that the photo was taken, there was high flash used, and that does wash out any, like if you have freckles, it washes out your freckles. If you have wrinkles, it washes out your wrinkles. If you have bruises, it washes out bruises when you have high flash being used. So Yeah, it makes it harder to see in a photo, but it doesn't mean that it's gone. It's still there. I don't like that type of nitpicking and like, I don't know, that bruise is kinda hard to see," because then that underestimates and yeah, underestimates the intelligence of the jury, underestimates the intelligence of the, person who's testifying. In this case, it was cousin Rachel, who I guess would be a witness in this case. It's like, "Do you think I've never seen flash photography before? Like, is that what we're doing? So we're just condescending to everybody and trying to pretend that everybody's stupid? Because that's not usually a winning strategy." I have not seen condescending to people to be a way to get them on your side. It's just me. Um, so yeah, that cousin Rachel's whole time on the stand was like an hour-ish. So they knew how to be efficient with her, and then they did lunch break, and then when we came back from lunch, we got to the testimony of Claire Headley, which I'm very okay. So Claire Headley came on as an expert witness on the topic of Scientology policies and procedures. And if you are not familiar with Claire Headley, she is an ex-Scientologist who was a top executive in Scientology for about 5 years, but now works with her husband, Mark. Among other things, they work on running their YouTube channel, Blown for Good. Blow means when you leave Scientology. It's a Scientology term for leaving. So they are blown for good. Mark also wrote a book by this title, so you should all go subscribe to Blown for Good if you have not yet. Get the book if you have not yet. Give it a read. And the rest of the SPTV channels, SPTV means suppressive person TV. If you're a suppressive person, that's, as I mentioned before, when you get excommunicated and disconnected from Scientology, you get labeled a suppressive person. Honestly, it sounds like they're excelling. Sounds like they're making the best choices for their lives by becoming suppressive persons. So everybody on SPTV is pretty proud of it, to be honest. So Claire Headley came to testify as an expert witness on the subject of Scientology policies and procedures. I was not sure if she was a blind witness, but then I think in one of the streams yesterday, Aaron said that she was. So, was sorry. I don't know. I have a hard time with necessarily considering her a completely blind witness because of her association with the YouTube sphere and how much her, at least like her close friend Erin, has been covering the trials over the past few months. But either way, she wasn't asked about the trial. She was asked in general terms about what are the rules of Scientology? What is Scientology? What is the procedure? If this person does this, then what happens? So she wasn't asked anything about any of the witnesses, any of the victims, anybody involved. So it doesn't matter even if she does know anything about it and if she does know, it would be in a speculative sense, it would be in a general sense anyway. She's not privy to what actually she wasn't there for any of this, you know? So, anyway, the reason Claire's testimony is so important is not just because of the context that it gives for this particular trial, but because she's somebody who is willing to go on the record, under oath, under penalty of perjury, but also under risk of increased harassment from Scientology itself, putting her neck on the line to testify to exactly what Scientology is, how it functions, and basically put the inner workings of a cult on display, which is rare in American courtrooms. There's not a ton of cult lawsuits. And this is huge beyond even just Scientology circles as far as I'm concerned, and beyond this lawsuit, because there's a lot of Scientology lawsuits going on or coming up. She's doing this at great risk to herself. So it makes no sense for her to go up there and lie. She has nothing to win by telling the truth. Yeah, she has nothing to win by telling the truth, honestly. Um, because Scientology is gonna come at her 10 times harder than they have before. And yet here she is. All she has to win is a healthy conscience, I guess, but here she is, and I love seeing how many, like, strong, brave women are really banding together in this trial and taking down an asshat of a guy, so it seems, you know? So, yeah, let's get into what Claire has to say. Sorry, I got a little distracted, so I didn't really deliver that part the way that I wanted to, but it's over now. Essentially, Claire started with some basic overall explanations about what Scientology is and her experience in Scientology. She was born into Scientology and she was in until age 30. And so she talks about that as well as the education she received or really did not receive. The only education she got was literally Scientology schooling, and how she rose through the ranks of Scientology to essentially become number 3 in the church during her last 5 years that she was in. And she explains how she specifically worked with RTC, the Research and Technology Center, which is the highest level Scientology organization. An organization in Scientology essentially is their word for a church building or like a church campus. If you go to one of those big churches with multiple buildings on the property, that is kind of the easiest analogy to make there. And each organization has a not each, some of them have specific focuses. Like Flag specifically focuses on delivering higher level Scientology services. And then RTC, for example, is the Research and Technology Center. So RTC is the only Scientology organization in the world that houses the top confidential levels of Scientology policies, procedures, and teachings. So by working there, Claire not only learned more about Scientology than the average Scientologist could, she also, because she rose up in the ranks to become an extremely high ranking executive there, at that time, it means that she was trusted and respected by others as someone who knows those policies and procedures very well. Otherwise, she wouldn't have got to the top. So this is one of the main reasons that she qualifies as an expert in Scientology. And they made that point on the record, under oath, in front of the jury. Claire then, after going through that background information, very clearly, in layman's terms, explained many Scientology policies that she was asked about, which were related to the case. But again, I believe that she went into it as a blind expert witness. So she wasn't supposed to know like the stories of the Jane Does. I think that you can know in theory that there are Jane Does, but if you don't know the specific what their stories are, then you're not going to be influenced in any way as how you describe these things. So, some of the things that she described for the jury include, and I think there's even more than this, it's a decent list, um, the concept that wherever there is a conflict between the laws of the land and the laws of Scientology, a Scientologist must follow the laws of Scientology. This is a very important foundation to lay for everything else that comes after this. Next, she describes the Scientology report process that R word victims, any crime victims, victims of violence, have to go through, and she essentially confirms exactly what the Jane Does had described was the process that they had gone through. She confirmed that there are some times when reports have to be written in the presence of and under the direction of Scientology officials. And along those lines, she described a policy that was passed in 1997 about not including certain terms of a sensitive nature in reports, especially when something like an SA was committed against one Scientologist by another Scientologist. This was because they wanted to avoid bad PR for Scientology. And I think it also is because reports like that are sent to higher level organizations. And it seems they wanted to hide certain things from those high-level staff, including, I would postulate, David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology. I guess what he don't know won't hurt him? That's what it looks like to me anyways, but if you're more familiar with it, please let me know in the chat or in the comments if you're watching on the replay. Claire also confirmed that there is favoritism towards celebrities in good standing, which would have included Danny Masterson at the time. She also confirmed the existence of the fair game policy, which is essentially church-sanctioned stalking and harassment of former Scientology members, I believe pretty much for the rest of their lives, especially those who have ever spoken out against Scientology. They get fair gamed until they stop speaking out. But even then, I don't think that they really get fully, like, I don't think they fully let up on them, or until they return to Scientology, or until you, like, pass away. I think that those are the 3 options. I think it can really be a lifelong thing, which is sad to think about. Claire also talked, which is very interesting. Claire also talked about how Scientology views the word victim, which is very differently from how you and I use it. Essentially, in Scientology, being labeled a victim means that you are one step away from being deceased. They have this emotional tone scale that goes from -4 to +4, with 0 in the middle, obviously. So anybody below a 2.0 on the scale is succumbing to death and cannot be trusted. When you're dead, your rank is 0 in the middle. Being a victim is ranked at a 0.1. So, not a place that you wanna be at, and definitely an insult in the way that they use it, rather than the way that we use it, which is just like a statement of fact. If somebody is a victim of a crime, something was just, like, done to them. There doesn't have to be a bunch of connotation to it, you know? Most importantly, Scientology believes that people who are victims are experiencing negative circumstances in their lives because they pulled it in, meaning that they committed some sort of crime or transgression in a prior life. So ultimately, it's their own fault, even if that fault does not come from their actions in this lifetime. So isn't that lovely? Claire also confirmed that Scientology put their version of a gag order on at least one of these Jane Does. I don't remember if it may have been more. And there was more. There was more. I'm not gonna lie, on and on. But basically, everything that the Jane Does had testified to in terms of Scientology's policies and procedures, Claire confirmed that it is real. So that was a huge help to anybody who may have been questioning their credibility, because honestly, Scientology sounds fake. When the first time you hear about this stuff and you're like, "How is this a church? How is this how is this supposed to make your life better?" It sounds crazy, but having first of all, having so many people with these shared experiences, and then having somebody stand up there as an expert approved by a court of law, it gives so much validity and credibility to what the Jane Does are saying. And it's absolutely huge to put all of this onto the record in a court of law, in a lawsuit under oath. There are multiple Scientology-related lawsuits going on right now and coming in the future, so it is vital information to have on the record. And honestly, to my surprise, once Claire was done with her direct examination, she also got cross-examined just like any other witness. Sean Hawley did not really object to the validity of anything that Claire was saying while she gave her direct exam. And then the cross-examination that she tried to give, Sean Hawley tried to cross-examine her. She tried to undercut her credibility, even though Claire was in Scientology from birth until age 30, so she knew her shit. She really did. Sean, for example, she tried to cause confusion about exactly how much Scientology training Claire got, even though Claire was trained up to the absolutely highest level of training that a Scientologist can get. And that's that on that. You know, ultimately, I don't think it worked. I think it just proved that Sean was the one who really didn't know very much about Scientology. And again, the defense is not winning points here. They're not. This is not going well. This is not going well for the defense. I You can never predict what a jury is gonna do, but I will be shocked if Danny Masterson wins this trial. All right, let me look at the chat. Let me say hi to you guys. Danny Masterson won't accept a plea. He thinks he's invincible and it was all consensual. Um, they consented to being drugged and having a gun. Right, exactly. This is what I'm saying. Like, I think I think I say it at some point in the script later on, but like, how do you drug somebody's drink and then think that anything that happens after that is them acting of their own consent? Are you just dumb? Like, it's okay if you're just dumb. You can just say that you're dumb. I'd rather you just say that than try to convince the rest of us that we're crazy, you know? This is a lot of work to go through to I don't know, man. Um, yeah. All right, so let me get back in. We're gonna go even faster. Oof. Sorry, I gotta adjust my leg. Okay. We're gonna go into Thursday, day 9 of testimony, Thursday of last week. Jane Doe 2 took the stand. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay. So that was we had Jane Doe 1, we had her cousin Rachel, we had Claire. That was the schedule on Wednesday. And then Thursday of last week, day 9 of testimony, we heard from Jane Doe 2. And most of the day was her direct examination. She had a particularly brutal tale to tell. And she did, yet another one to talk about Danny Masterson allegedly drugging her drink. So there is a scary pattern of behavior that is happening here repeatedly. And then for Danny, this is what I was just saying, for Danny to fight so hard to make the Jane Does think that he didn't R-word them, borderline disassociated from reality. I don't get it. At one point while Jane Doe 2 this is interesting to me. At one point while Jane Doe 2 was testifying, she thought she saw some Scientology members in the courtroom and got weirded out by them being there. They were asked to identify themselves, but it turns out they were just public defenders, and they had their IDs to prove it, just in there watching the trial. So, of course, Philip Cohen used that moment as soon as he started his cross-examination, which is pretty much at the end of the day. He used that moment of suspicion, again, God forbid, a moment of humanity, to try to paint Jane Doe 2 as being this anti-Scientology, paranoid person, seeing Scientologists everywhere, which to me is like, okay, maybe she got this wrong, that those people weren't Scientologists watching her testify, but I would argue, isn't that just evidence that Scientology is giving her reasons to be so afraid? You know? Maybe following her around, maybe harassing her, maybe fair gaming her, etc. So again, I don't think that that is a helpful argument for Philip Cohen to make in this circumstance. You never win points by picking on a Jane Doe. I just Thursday, there was not a ton of information out there that there was testimony from Jane Doe, but again, it's like, it's very difficult to talk about. So, and I honestly, I don't feel comfortable even talking about my own, like, essay experiences. I'm certainly not, like, gonna talk about somebody else's. It feels like violating somebody else's privacy. It's there, it exists. Underground Bunker blog, again, has been doing a pretty good job of almost verbatim transcribing what's going on as an easy there are real transcripts, but I think sometimes those are delayed or they're expensive to get. So if you want to really, like, get into the details of what happened and what was said, that's a better place to go. Um, but I'm not necessarily comfortable with, like, going into detail of other people's traumatic experiences. They're only sharing it because they have to. Guarantee you they'd rather be anywhere else but on the stand. Okay, so that was Thursday. Brief recap. There was no trial on Friday nor on Monday. It did resume yesterday, Tuesday. So I'm late doing this week 2 recap, so we're gonna also talk about Tuesday. Um, excuse me. So Philip Cohen continued the cross-examination of Jane Doe 2. They did redirect and recross right after that. Later in the day, there was testimony from witnesses who are Jane Doe 2's friends and family at the time to corroborate what she had said at the time. Oh, I see you guys. Yeah. Philip Co bow wow, I skipped a note and scattered my way to the next one. What? Okay, yeah. So Jane Doe 2 in her whole visage is very calm, clear, believable, relatable, reliable, and she's very careful with her words and with the words that she allows Danny Masterson's defense lawyer to use, characterizing her words, which honestly, it's interesting to me to see that kind of pushback against a lawyer, especially with it being allowed, because sometimes lawyers get real, like, um it's a little bit like they're complaining to mom when a witness pushes back against them. So if the I've seen this in a couple of different trials so far. Um, the lawyer will say to the witness, like, "So didn't you say that you hated people from Arkansas?" And then the witness will be like, "But well, you see, hated is a strong," and they'll be like, "Your Honor, it's a yes or no question. Why can't they just answer?" And they'll instead of like letting them answer in a nuanced way, they're like, "Your Honor," and they act all like offended and like victimized by the witness just talking like a human. So it is interesting to me to see that there was some pushback allowed and some like rewording allowed and rephrasing allowed. Philip's given up is what's happening. And I'm living for it. Thank you, Philip. Please change your tactic. It's about goddamn time. Okay. So yesterday, Philip was the only one to be lawyering. Sean Hawley, the other lawyer from the team, never actually got up yesterday. So unfortunately, we saw a lot of his typical tactics of focusing in and trying to make a big deal out of tiny inconsistencies. Usually it's some insignificant factoid, not really like the main point, the main purpose, the main timeline of Jane Doe's experience with Danny Masterson, specifically her essay, which is why we're all here. Philip wants us to miss the point, but I don't think it's working here again. He's just looking like he's nitpicking and not in a way that helps his client. He even did it to the extent that, again, at one point, Judge Almeida stopped court. She didn't just interject from the bench, she sent the jury out and basically gave him some lawyerly advice because the thing about judges, they all used to be lawyers. So she says to him, "Listen, dude, the way that you're asking these questions is causing so many objections from the prosecution," which she is sustaining those objections because they're appropriate. She's saying, "You're causing all of these objections, and you could be prejudicing yourself to the jury. So you should fucking stop." And just because we've said the word prejudicing a couple times, I just wanna make sure we understand. Prejudicing yourself or prejudicing your client means causing prejudice about yourself or the client. So making them dislike you, making the jury dislike you, making the jury become biased against you because you're being so fucking annoying to the extent that they can't listen to you and they can't take you seriously because they just fucking hate you at this point. So the judge is like, "You're making the jury hate you. Stop." Like, you can keep doing it if you want, but it's up to you. I'm just letting you know the jury has every right to be pissed with you right now. They have a legal right to to be mad at you. Like, I would understand. That's so funny to me. I love this judge. I love this judge. Hi, Barry Carter. So, if anything, the advice sidebar that went on here should show that the judge is being fair in this courtroom. She is not being just blindly pro Jane Doe's and not yeah, and she's not like there's no way that the defense can come back and be like, "She's biased," because she's, like, giving you advice on how to lawyer. So, like, she's not letting you make a fool of yourself, essentially. So, like, at the end of the day, Danny has a legal right to good representation and good lawyering, no matter how gross we think he is, and the judge is doing a good job protecting that right, you know? Um, so they can't complain, is what I'm saying. The cross-examination was a ton of that shit, which is fucking exhausting just to hear about, again, let alone being the jurors or being the Jane Does themselves going through it. So I'm that's enough of that detail. Um, after lunch, they had redirect and recross, which both seemed to go pretty quick. And interestingly, Graham Brewer, remember him from the beginning of the stream, the one who allegedly had inappropriate interactions unconsensually with Jane Doe 1, he came back into the courtroom after lunch on yesterday, and, I because of his like, for many days, he didn't show up, but then he showed up yesterday after lunch. It makes me think that there are certain people that he's not allowed to be there for either by the court or by Scientology, saying like, "Yeah, don't be present during maybe the Jane Doe's testimony," but maybe he is allowed to be there for the friends and family and, like, police testimonies, I'm not sure. It's very interesting, his choices of times to appear. Um, and then in the afternoon, after Jane Doe finished, we had testimony from her friend Rachel, not the same as cousin Rachel from earlier. This is Jane Doe 2's friend Rachel and her friend Jordan. And there's two more friends coming to testify. Or, well, it's complicated. I'll talk about it the next time I stream. So Rachel was a Scientologist at the time of the event, and then Jordan was not. So what we get to see here in these two testimonies is this where there is congruence and incongruence between how Jane Doe 2 described everything with her Scientology brainwashing and specifically how it was received by a Scientology friend, Rachel, and a non-Scientology friend, Jordan, and then how each of them described everything to the police. Everybody believed Jane Doe 2. It's not that, like, Rachel believed her, but Jordan didn't or anything like that. It's just more of, like, the way that Scientologist Jane Doe 2 described it to Scientologist Rachel. Rachel received it a certain way, as opposed to Scientologist Jane Doe 2 describing it to non-Scientologist friend Jordan. There was a different reception there, or like a different understanding of it because she wasn't processing it through the Scientology lens the way that friend Rachel, who was in the same Scientology bubble as Jane Doe 2. So again, Underground Bunker has more of the specific back and forth testimony that each of them gave. And I think that when I do my next stream, I will probably I think I'll have a little bit more detail on that. Um, I was more focused on what happened last week than I was on yesterday's because I know that I would like to keep following this trial as it continues, so I think I'll do at least one more stream on it. But yeah, that brings us to today. Um, Today, as far as I know, there are 2 more testimonies of people corroborating or just basically people who are like around Jane Doe 2 in her life at the time that Danny Masterson allegedly attacked her, who she spoke with about it and who can corroborate what she said, how she like her mood and her appearance and how she described it, and is she telling the same story today, essentially. And then also, I think some police testimonies are starting today. Honestly, it's not gonna be too long until Aaron gives his first update from court. They're 3 hours behind me. For me, it's 2:30 PM. So he does his update at 12:30 Pacific. So wait, 11, 12, 1, 2. So yeah, in about an hour, he'll be doing his, update from the courtroom. So then you'll be able to hear all about what's happening today on trial day. What is it? Trial day 11 is today. But so that's where we're at. It's kind of a I feel like I mean, I'm happy to see that it seems like the defense is not accomplishing a goddamn thing. There is no defense being offered here. I mean, and that being said, it is the prosecution's case right now. After the prosecution is finished putting out all of their evidence and everything, then the defense can present their own witnesses, present their own evidence, present their own this and that and the other. In the first trial, I think they chose not to, but in this trial, they very well could, and legally they should, but at least as of now, God, it doesn't look good. It does not look good for Danny Masterson, which is a great thing as far as I'm concerned. I it's fine with me. Um, Pop in on the chat with Aaron. Aw, thanks, Beachcomber. Oh, thank you, Colonel Brock. Yeah, all right, let's go to the chat. Hi, guys. How are you doing? Let's like the stream, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Um, Pop in on the chat with Aaron. It'll be good to see you there. Thank you, Beachcomber. I'm actually home today. I'm not working today, so I might be able to actually do that. So look for my name. Hannah needs to yell. I'm going to try to be there. And then Anne asked, isn't the judge not supposed to do that, like give the lawyers advice? This is where I fall outside of outside of my I have no expertise here. I'm an enthusiast. So, I'm gonna say me characterizing it as advice does not literally mean that it's advice, if you know what I mean. But I think that she's done this a couple of times where she points out, like, or it might be a way of, like, saving time because that's also a thing where the judge can butt in to say she did this at the beginning of the trial with the prosecution lawyer. She was saying, like, "Prosecution, you are taking so long to get to these to the answers of these questions. You're asking a question, 'What color is your sweater?'" Jane Jane Doe is like, "My sweater is yellow." She's like, "Okay, okay, so your sweater is yellow. And so what do you wear with a yellow sweater?" And then that's not literal, but and so then the judge is like, "You gotta stop. You gotta stop repeating her answer. I know that you probably don't even realize that you're doing it. It's probably a stylistic thing, but it's just making everything take so long." So I think that that might be kind of what it is. Not that she's, like, giving legal advice, but maybe because it's more like stylistic advice, then it might be allowed. I don't know. I'm not the lawyer. That's a good question for lawyer friend Zach Morgan. I'm not sure. I'm just happy to see her kinda every now and then coming in to corral, like, these old men who are just taking forever and being obnoxious. Just be like, "Hi, we all can see that you're being obnoxious. Can you stop?" 'Cause sometimes, um, somebody else okay, yeah. You guys are funny. Thank you for understanding. Um, rather like, that I think this was back when I was saying I'm not, like, super comfy reading or, like, discussing deeply the, details of other people's traumatic experiences, and I'm not. So, thank you guys for understanding that. I really appreciate it. Hi, let's meet in the middle. Oh, Hannah, hello, Colonel Brock. I am a never in, and, but I come from a high control religious background. It's not Scientology. It's it's Pentecostal Christianity, but, like, a very it's not even, like, mainstream. It's, like, just this one little church. It's not part of an organization. It's, like, not part of a group. It's, like it's hard to describe other than just, like, a pastor who is full of himself and was trying to convince us that he was the only way to God, and I grew up in it, and that, sometimes, you don't know things until you know them. But thanks for asking, and someday I might talk more about that, um, not now. We're at a long stream right now, so, you know, I think I need, my channel is not a particularly, like, cult-focused channel, and there are some that certainly are. So I wade carefully when it comes to these types of topics because anytime that you start talking about religion and talking about God, it's it's sensitive, you know? It's sensitive for me talking about it, and it's sensitive for people hearing about it. It's very personal, it's very existential, the existential crises that I've gone through multiple times because of this kind of stuff is just like, whew. And I think that there's a part of me that's like, it's a decision that I take not very lightly, to go into that and how I want to discuss it. So I want to see some more interest about it. Thank you, Grass. Thanks. Oh my God, thank you. Um So I think, yeah, I wanna see more interest from the audience before I start discussing am I yelling? Before I start discussing too much of that stuff, and I wanna make sure that the audience, I guess, is, like, kind of in a place to be able to receive it before I start talking too much about it. Yeah. That's the and I know even saying it that way is, like, a little bit, like, woo woo, but I just don't it's tough. All right, guys. Yes, I agree, Beachcomber. Cohen is trying far too hard. What else has he got? He's got nothing else. That's the problem. That's why he's doing his best with what he's got. But what he's got is absolutely nothing. What he's got is nitpicking, wording. Like there was some of the questions that he was going back and forth about with Jane Doe too was like she was talking about how she has anxiety and she was because in Scientology you don't use medication, so she was like quote unquote like, medicating herself kind of with a very controlled small use of alcohol, basically saying she would take a swig of alcohol to lessen her anxiety. And sometimes she said swig, sometimes she said sip, sometimes she said drink, and Philip Cohen was like hammering her on was it a swig, was it a sip, was it a drink? And it's like, Jesus Christ, man. No, does not matter how much we're talking about. It was not enough to justify Danny Masterson essaying her. Like, why are we over here in Finland when we're trying to talk about something that happened in California? Like, what's happening? you know? So I guess that's a strategy. It's all strategy, and it sucks in a way talking about trials because then it turns into talking about strategy and talking about the gamesmanship of it, and you lose focus on the real people who've gone through real awful experiences who are trying to get real justice. So yeah, it's weird, and it's a lot of showmanship trials. And true Lydia, even if she was hammered, she wasn't and cannot consent exactly. So it does not help his case either way. This is what I don't get about this man. And he's supposed to be like a big fancy lawyer that a lot of people, like famous people, have hired. Like he's some kind of a big deal hotshot. And I'm like, for why? He doesn't really, this guy? Okay. Okay. I guess our standards for what's like a big deal hotshot lawyer has really dropped recently. I don't know. Colonel Brock, I know of Marilyn, but I've never spoken with her or anything. I appreciate her work very much. I watch the SPTV channels pretty regularly. I've been interested in the Scientology content for probably 9 months to a year at this point. I'm very much a lurker. I'm not good at commenting, but also guys, there's been a lot going on with me, so I watch at weird times. I'm not usually catching the lives. I'm usually catching the replay. So I'm not doing a ton of chatting in the moment usually. But I guess that's probably a good place for me to kind of wrap up and leave it here, is that I do recommend that you all, if you're interested in this topic, interested in this trial, as much as I might enjoy commentating on it, I do recommend and suggest and even request that you start the loudest motorcycle in my neighborhood. Okay. That you watch more, even additional coverage of this trial from actual ex-Scientologists. They bring much more perspective and insight than myself. So I've mentioned a million times, Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology, Mark and Claire Headley at Blown for Good, Mike Rinder at, I think his channel is Mike Rinder SP, but I think that the like channel name is Mike Rinder. Oh no, Nora, Amy Scobie, what's the Peeling the Onion channel? Our Scientology Story with I know their names and I forgot. There's so many. And anytime that you go to anytime that you go to the other SPTV channels, they're always constantly listing the names of the different channels. So I recommend that you give them a watch and get their perspective, because they're going to bring more of that background knowledge to it. My videos are like about once a week, and I'm trying more to, yes, thank you, Janice Gillum Grady and Mark Fisher. Thank you guys. Yes, you're the real ones. I love it. So they've lived this, so they're going to really bring that additional perspective that I can't. I'm more trying to summarize what is honestly a voluminous amount of content to watch from Aaron and from everybody else as they do the like daily multiple videos. I'm trying to make it a little bit more streamlined. So yeah, they're going to bring the expertise that I quite can't, but I try to offer what I can, Colonel, thank you. And I am not a crafter. Me and like fine motor skills are not good friends. But every other art form besides visual or like tactile is I'm better at. I'm more of like actor, singer, writer, dancer, like that kind of stuff. But I'm not good with my hands. Wish I was. But yeah, so with that being said, it's not too long until Aaron's live. So everybody quick, take your lunch break. and then Aaron's going to be on. So I'll see you guys in about a week to give my next recap on whatever happens in this trial. Before you leave, I hope you like the video. Maybe share it with a pal. Subscribe to my channel with notifications on if you have not yet, because notifications, I upload and I stream sporadically, so notifications are really going to help you to know what I'm up to, especially over the next little while. I am going to be taking a break coming up soon. So thank you guys so much for being here in the chat. Definitely nice to meet you, and I hope I see you more around SPTV world. I'm going to try to make sure that I chat in all the chats, and yeah, have a good day. It's lovely weather around me. I hope it is around you. Happy May. I feel like there's something I'm forgetting to say. Subscribe to my channel. Have a great day. Find someone to hug. Everybody needs a hug. Okay? All right. Peace be with you always. Have a good one. Bye.